So we continue with the modeling of our dinosaur, having me here, my sketch going and looking at the resource again. We had before provided some work on some of the muscles, the bigger muscles. Now I'm gonna try to see if I can start adding a bit more of that smaller detail, but still kind of enough for me to not go too deep into the the modeling of the object, just kind of pushing a little bit more of those little elements of modeling that just suggest roughly, you know, some of those characteristics. Probably I'm gonna not do them all because of timing considerations here, but start pushing a bit more on the more details. So let me just put this one to the side. I had closed my files when I open it again, and here is my second version of my file. And of course, making sure that I'm still working under my subtool under the dinosaur. And here is the last version I had where I have pushed and modified some little things here and there, maintaining my symmetry. I press X on on my keyboard just to make sure that I have my symmetry on. And I'm gonna start doing it, but um, because I've been doing it on this model at this low resolution, I'm gonna start working on it at a higher resolution. So let me just try to zoom in here. I'm gonna switch here to my pen, and let me see, here I am. And I'm going to say, okay, well, the the base geometry needs to be divided. I need to add more to it. So if you go here to your tool, there is a section here under geometry. In that section of geometry, you can see how you can divide the subdivision. And here I have at this point right now, where my active points in my view are 154,000 points that I have on what I'm seeing. The total model has 180,000 points. So I'm going to divide one time, and that went to 600,000 points, and that might be okay. I'm going to divide a second time, so that went to 2 million points, 2.5 million points. And you can see the geometry getting a bit better. I have a pretty decent graphics card, so you wanna, keep an eye on that. But so far my computer can still handle it. Probably I can go up to subdivision right now, 3 or 4 or 5, I'm sorry. I can go back to my original one if I wanted to modify some of the things that you simply need to slide back. That's the same as if I go with my, I think Shift D, I can go down, Shift D, or D alone, I can go back up to my higher resolution. So here I'm gonna try to do a little bit of sculpting, and I'm gonna just subtract, and I'm going to maybe bring down my, I'm sorry, not that, hold on, my pressing here, I'm gonna bring down my brush size and maybe in size and keep it a bit wider. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm sorry, no intensity, focal. But I don't like much here, is like I don't get to see much of it, I guess. So more like small with a bigger focal. So that way it's a bit softer. And then intensity, I'm gonna keep it small to start testing. And again, what I said, I'm gonna start just pushing a little bit here so I can get to see my geometry doing a little bit of that extra work. I'm not going too heavy with it. I'm gonna try another one right here. You can see very, very gently how I am getting closer to my object, and of course making sure that my symmetry is on. Let me try doing a little bit of the part that I had done already. Let me just move here, zoom out a tiny bit, move up, and then try to rotate around here and say, okay, this one I want to highlight, try to crank up my intensity a tiny bit so I can start seeing the effect. Notice I'm not doing really, really sharp things. I'm just suggesting a bit more of the of the carving there. If you feel that you don't like it, if you type BS, then you can get the smooth BS smooth, and then I hit OK. That way, my shift, I can go and just correct a little bit of that, or you can use your undo if you want. So too much. And let me try to do my. Ooh, I went to a different tool. I went to the scribe. By accident, I went to the scribe brush. So, which is a different one. Let's just play with that one since it's on. I got it just by accident. So you see how my intensity at 99. I'm gonna go and then try to play with it for a moment. You see that that one gives a little bit extra chance to you're using it like a little tool to push in. If you don't like it, you can simply can undo that and go back to your sander brush if it gives you a bit more sense of uh, confidence of what you're doing. I think that little by little we'll get better at doing some of that sculpting. You move around a tiny bit more, push a tiny bit. Some of these features here and there, and then rotate around, maybe give it a little bit here, and maybe suggesting a bit more of, I'm going to just bring my draw size a tiny bit, and then try to suggest a little bit of a rib cage there. That way I can try to look at it. I'm going to just zoom in now onto some of the leg muscles here. I said I was going to sharpen, go a bit tinier here. So I'm sharpening some of those, sharpening this transition here, and then maybe getting this one to do that. So I'm suggesting the muscle a bit better there. I can just broaden my, keep pressing the home key, I'm sorry. We got it here. All right, I'm gonna broaden my shift, my focal shift a tiny bit more, so I can push in a bit broader. And again, if I don't like it, I'm at S. That way I can soften a little bit the transition. Let me just zoom in a little bit. So that kind of softens it a little bit so it's not too drastic. I'm gonna do a little bit of muscle definition here, helping it a little bit more, pushing there, the inside to maybe a little bit of this wrinkle. All right, so you get the idea. So I'm gonna just try to zoom there and then move and do the last few steps of detail. So I just give a little extra definition of some of the shapes there. I can probably go and spend more time on that head because now this time around. So the cool thing is that if, let's say for example, I want to do a little bit of extra work here, and I say, you know what, I want to push the head and get that eye socket to be a bit more pronounced. And if I feel that I need to do something a bit broader because I need to do something else, I can go back down to, let's say, subdivision 2 and modify subdivision 2 a bit broader. So push out some of the effects on a lower level, and then of course go back up and push the smaller details. And now I'm adding, so let me just undo that because I wasn't planning to add. I was just subtracting here. So I'm gonna try to suggest what's going to be his nose there, and a few of those other features that I can see from my image. I'm trying to just get it down relatively quickly. I had said we need to do something here suggests for this one. Actually, I'm going to turn off my symmetry because I want to be able to go and push. Let me just broaden the sides a little bit. Like that. So I'm going to try to generate. I'm going to do a little bit. I don't like the way it looks there. I'm just going to do a little bit. I'm going to Control Z. All right, so I'm going to go. Okay. So I'm doing it in both directions because, of course, I turned off. And why did I turn off the symmetry if I'm going in both directions? And that's because, the symmetry comes to a point in the center where it cannot do the job the way I want it because it kind of pinches the geometry and I needed to push in both directions. It's very low rest, still. I'm not doing it too heavy, just a little bit. So just suggesting that F to frame it, and that gives me a basic shape. Of course, I'm going to just save my file. I can do a quick save, but in this case, I'm going to save a new version just in case I mess up and I can go back to the prior one. All right, so that gives me a little extra definition of my object. Now I can add some more detail and I'm going to divide one more time. And that division, of course, takes a little bit more. Let me see, it didn't take it when I click with my mouse. And now it's calculating. I went up to 5, and then they were up to 39 million polygons, which I'm pretty high. Actually putting too far. Let me go back up a little bit. I'm going to keep it on 4. I clicked twice thinking that it wasn't doing it. So I went to 9 million polygons. See, that seemed reasonable. After 4 or 5, then you're at the mercy of your graphics card. You got to be quick saving constantly. And because of course your model gets heavy, so you want to try to be careful with it. And of course here is the time for us to push a little bit more some of those details to get some of those wrinkles a bit more precise and with a little bit better quality. So let me try to move there. And let me use, I can use a standard, I can try using some of those other scribes or maybe some of other tools. I always, I'm a little hesitant of when I'm working on a model that to put too much. I can try pinch to see how pinch gives me. And of course, pinch I want to subtract. I try to keep it simple here to see how I can start. Now I'm going with my tablet. I'm going to change my draw size a little bit. I'm going to start pinching there. Not seeing a lot of it. Let me just crank up the intensity there. There is. For a moment, correct a little bit. So you start seeing, of course, the effect to make it more dramatic. Of course, there will be places where you want to have it more or less. Since I'm losing my pen, it becomes a tiny bit. Of course, shift still my smooth. I can use the smooth here and there to that I'm able to try to do that muscle there. If I crank it up a tiny bit, I may be able to push it. Zoom in a little bit there. Too far. Undoing because I'm not certain of some results there, but I hope you get the idea. I'm just zooming and softening some of that so that it's not so irregular, a bit better. And I'm gonna try to go to, of course, the head, rotate around, and try to get some of those sharper. That one I didn't like. Let's see if we can rotate around and do it maybe this way. Probably can do a better job with this. I'm just having a hard time with my hand not being so sharp. I'll try to tone down. I'm gonna do because I'm not happy with it. Just bring it down a little bit. See if I can. Job. There it is. I think it's just matter. I'm working on a tablet that is not a screen tablet. It's just like a regular Wacom. So a little bit of that hand eye coordination becomes a bit more of a challenge. Right, I'm gonna increase the intensity a little bit more so I can get a better result there. And of course I have to do it on the other side too. And now the tablets give a little pressure sensitivity. Let me see if I can soften some of these effects on the side that I don't like. I can try also doing some other extra things on top of it, but for now this is doing what I want. All right. So of course, I'm trying to do it here so fast for my demonstration. You will spend more time on it so that you start getting a better result on increment and save here. I'm gonna do my version 4. And of course it takes a little bit longer to render or to save. And since I'm in this, I'm not going to crank it up higher. Maybe I will, but my computer can handle it, but you gotta be careful with yours. So you save constantly. I'm gonna crank it up one more time. I'm gonna click with my mouse because I think my pen is not that good for it. So there is, I went to division 5, 39 million polygons, so I'm really pushing my computer now. I'm gonna quit my Maya because I have it open in the background. And so that it frees a little bit of memory on my computer. And of course I'm videotaping this, so of course that's also charging my graphics card, so that makes it a little bit harder. And here of course I can go and start doing additional details to it. Let's say for example, sharpen up some of those little things, and I can start maybe using some other tools to start creating sharper examples. So for example, there is a chisel. There are a number of chisels, but there is the basic chisel, and the basic chisel allows you to go and push some of those effects a tiny bit more. So let me try to rotate around here and push a bit more there. I'm gonna turn on my X symmetry just to try to push in a tiny bit more with my chiseling tool. So right now I'm just sharpening some of those effects. I probably will go around here, do a little bit of it. If you don't see it, you can play with it a little bit more. Or find a different tool. Right now you have different options. I'm doing the round one. I can punch it a bit more. Oh, I went too far. Look at that. Let me undo. There it is. See if I can. Maybe thinking about it. And there are other ways of doing things. For example, I can use the clay and maybe broaden my draw size a little bit, my intensity here, and then I can start using, for example, spray at a very, very low amount of intensity and start spraying on my object, a little bit of deformation. So it's not, and again, this is all, or I can just get it down a little bit if I want to have it a bit more visible. So you can see like I'm adding noise and imperfections to my object. So it's not perfectly smooth. I don't want it to be like a dolphin. I want it to be slightly irregular here and there. You cannot see it happening. So I'm just adding a little bit of noise and clay feel to it. Now, all of this is great. I'm gonna go back to my standard here. All of this is great, but I'm gonna wrap up this section of the video with one extra thing, which is using alphas. And alphas is a way of kind of adding kind of extra opportunities for your tool. So adding kind of masking, if you want to think, it's not masking per se, but it's a tool that uses specific forms. So let's say, for example, you can start with these are procedural alphas, which are pre-created. You can use your own, but I'm gonna try using start using this one, for example, and I'm gonna just push. And if I start painting with it, you can see how it adds just those little dots to it. So you can do it that way. I'm gonna undo that because I don't like the way they're doing it. I can change it here. I can say it more drag direct, so I have a bit more control of how much. And if you think it's too much, right, you simply undo that, of course. You can always go back to using, dots or freehand, and the freehand allows you to kind of paint on it, like little dots here and there. I think in my case, I'd rather have it very, very subtle for those kind of things. Other things you can try doing is using some alphas, like for example, this one gives me kind of a crackle thing, which you can try painting on your object. Right now, for example, it's doing it that way. Let me just do it. Actually, I'm going to do that because I don't want it to repeat like that. That's not my idea. I want to do it as a drag. So I'm going to try to drag on my object. Right now it's doing it pushing in, so I'm going to try to maybe do it. I'm going to invert that. I'm going to say add and start doing it little by little like this, so I can start thinking of putting some of those kind of crack, and that's that kind of like a stony feel to it. That might not be probably what you have in mind with yours, but I'm just trying to here just to show something. You can always go to and undo your own alpha. And alphas are just simply bitmap images that you can go and create in Photoshop and do, specific shapes to it. I actually had brought one from texture.com, and I was kind of using it here, trying to test, let me inverse that one actually. And that one is a black and white image that I could try using for creating some effects of kind of skin-like. Since I'm in level 5, I'm pushing my boundaries here. And now I got my symmetry on, so this is happening all around the guy. And of course, this is a matter of testing. We're gonna soon test our first approach of bringing this model to Maya, or not the model, but the displacement map of this object, so I can start seeing how effective I'm being. Because we want to test it and maybe go back and try to correct some of these things. So with this, I'm going to just to frame it right now, and I probably will go and keep doing it all around until I get it to look the way I want it. I'm going to just save my file here, as another version just to be safe. Notice how the file size is increasing from 23 megabytes to 682 was my last version, and this one for sure will be a lot larger. Taking a little while to save. So hopefully this will be a good practice for you to be able to go and of course start adding, you know, wrinkles. You know, I have the feet and I have, you know, the legs and a lot of things that can be added. The level or division, subdivision 5, still saving. I'm gonna end up my movie there. Hopefully, it will finish saving pretty soon.